Welcome to Kingdom in Context. The Creator never intended for us to be confused by His words. He gave us His words of life, and He gave them in context, to be understood and beneficial to our walk with Him. This channel's goal is to bring clarity to some of the misconceptions that have formed over time among believers and taught by others, however innocent and well-intended. The Scriptures make complete sense when we keep them in context of His coming kingdom and His coming King, Jesus the Messiah. If you're blessed by what we're doing with this channel and feel led to support us, visit the video description below where we have a PayPal option, a monthly Patreon option, or a traditional P.O. Box address. Thank you, and remember, context creates comprehension. Welcome, fellow brave believers. This is Kingdomcast. I'm Sean Griffin, the host. Thanks for joining me tonight. I appreciate all of you who stayed up a little late to watch me. For me, this is the 8th day of Sukkot, so we're celebrating and having a good time, enjoying it. We just want to thank everyone for being here. It looks like there's already quite a few people in the chat, and let me see, there's quite a few. I want to say Stephen Schofield, welcome back, sir. Mr. Bear, AC, James 122, Paul Levi, Karen C., Gavin Miller, Set Apart Temple, Brian Allen, the Bearded Man, Adrenaline. I think I said that right. Welcome back, everybody. Lynette Moody, Susanna Avery, DC Talks, Toroth, James Henry. Looks like quite a few people in here. Thanks for joining us. Jimmy James, Catherine Huey. I think I said that right. You're from Kenya, and I apologize if I messed up your last name. Jubion Kenobi's back. West Plays Music is back. Yeah, thank you, brother. Happy Holy Convocation to you too. I appreciate it. So tonight, we are going to be checking out, basically, I wanted to review from an unusual source. People don't normally go to the book of Jubilees to really see why the feasts of God are instructed to us. A lot of people that have woken up to the idea that God's instructions for mankind, His instructions for living, have not gone away. They have not been done away with. They're none of that stuff, right? It's actually eternal, and that they're instructed for us to keep and practice. And we actually see prophecy when the New Jerusalem comes. We are actually going to be keeping those same feasts with the Father and the Son in the kingdom of heaven in the New Jerusalem. It's for everything. It's a memorial, a holiday. It's a set apart time that we get to enjoy with the Father and relax. Many of them are called Sabbaths. In fact, most of them are called Sabbaths. The only ones that are I'm still investigating as far as are they truly a Sabbath is the new moons. Both Jubilees and the Canon of 66 do not specifically say, but there is historian Josephus does declare them as a Sabbath as well. So I'm kind of investigating that a little further because I don't trust everything Josephus wrote down and talk about, but definitely want to test all things, so it's interesting. So let us just jump right into this, because I've got quite a few. We're going to be jumping into Jubilees and looking at some unique passages that explain the feast days to us. It's pretty amazing. So let me go and pull this up for us. All right, so the first one that we want to look at, actually, we're going to be looking at just a couple of verses here at the beginning of Jubilees chapter 1, because Jubilees chapter 1 starts off, the whole narrative starts off with Moses, who has ascended to Mount Sinai, and this is where the Father, through the angels, are actually going to communicate to him for 40 days and 40 nights. In this opening dialogue, the Father's literally telling Moses, generations from now, they're actually, after I take them into the land, they're going to rebel. And he's going to explain how they're going to rebel. And let's review those real quick. So it says here in Jubilees chapter 1, 6 through 10, and thus it will come to pass when all these things come upon them, they will recognize that I am more righteous than they are in all their judgments and in all their actions. And they will recognize that I've truly been with them. I'm going to just stop and point that out real quick, guys. That's why I'm always helping us try to understand the word righteous in Scripture means behavior. It means right behavior. So that's why the Father can make a statement like that, because he's perfect, right? So he would say, I have better behavior than them in all their judgments and all their actions. And they will recognize that I've truly been with them. And it says, when all this comes to pass upon them, he's about to go into some of the things they're going to rebel and do that's not going to be good. We also see some of the stuff mirrored also in Deuteronomy and Leviticus 26. So here it continues in verse 7. It says, and write for yourself all these words which I declare unto you this day, for I know their rebellion and their stiff neck, before I bring them into the land of which I swore to their fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, unto your seed I will give a land flowing with milk and honey, and they will eat and be satisfied, and they will turn to strange gods, to gods which cannot deliver them from aught of their tribulations, and this witness shall be heard for a witness against them. For they will forget all my commandments, even all that I commanded them, and they will walk after the Gentiles, after their uncleanness, after their shame, and will serve other gods. And will serve their gods. And these will prove unto them an offense, and a tribulation, and an affliction, and a snare. And many will perish, and they will be taken captive, and they will fall into the hands of the enemy, because they have forsaken my ordinances and my commandments, the festivals of my covenant, and my Sabbaths, my holy place, which I have hallowed for myself in their midst, in my tabernacle, and my sanctuary, which I have hallowed for myself in the midst of the land, that I should set my name upon it, and that it should dwell there. And they will make to themselves high places and groves and graven images, and they will worship each in his own graven image, so as to go astray. And they will sacrifice their children to demons and to all the works of the errors of their hearts. And he goes on to say, finish through 11 through 16 by saying, and I will send witnesses against them, that I may witness against them. But they will not hear, and will slay the witnesses also, and they will persecute those who seek the law. And they will abrogate and change everything so as to work evil before my eyes. And I will hide my face from them, and I will deliver them in the hand of the Gentiles for captivity, and for a prey, and for devouring. And I will remove them from the midst of the land, and I will scatter them amongst the Gentiles, and they will forget all my law, and all my commandments, and all my judgments. And they'll go astray as to the new moons, and the Sabbaths, and the festivals, and the Jubilees, and the ordinances. And after this, they will return to me from among the Gentiles with all their heart, with all their soul, with all their strength. I will gather them from amongst all the Gentiles. That means nations, guys. The word Gentiles means nations. And they will seek me, so that I shall be found of them. And when they seek me with all their heart and with all their soul, and I will disclose to them abounding peace with righteousness. And I will remove them, the plant of uprightness, with all my heart, with all my soul. And they shall and they shall be for me a blessing and not a curse. And they shall be the head and not the tail. And I will build my sanctuary in their midst, and I will dwell with them. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people in truth and righteousness. Yeah, it's really beautiful. So this is kind of a huge summation over time, explaining how, even though this conversation's happened on the top of Mount Sinai, it's the Father basically just laying out from the days of Moses in a very short summary fashion, all the way to the resurrection. That's how he's going to remove the plant of righteousness from the earth, and there will have abounding peace and righteousness. Remember, that word righteousness means right behavior. This is what we're promised at the resurrection. This is how we can be at peace with the Father. So that's what that's that summation he's talking about, all the way up to the resurrection. And that's the beauty, what we also see mirrored in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 1 through 8. So with that said, let's jump into, as you saw twice, it's mentioned, he talks about how we've got issues there with, he says you got issues basically with them forgetting his ordinances, his statutes, his festivals, his new moons, his all the Jubilees, and all the things that he's instructed in his instructions, the Torah. So let's look at where those came from, because as we've tried to explain here on Kingdom in Context, Moses is having this conversation on Mount Sinai, and it's not the first time they've heard this stuff. I promise you. This is a renewal of the covenant, because, and we're going to go into the scriptures that go over this, this is happening on Shavuot. And Shavuot is a huge covenant festival and memorial observance. And we're going to go over all the scriptures that define that, explain that for us. Right off the bat, guys, Noah, he's keeping the Feast of First Fruits, the Feast of Weeks. It's the same festival. I know that Judaism teaches it's two different festivals, but that's not true. If you actually dig into Numbers and Leviticus and you compare it with Jubilees 6, It's the same day. So this is where Jubilees 6 just outright tells us, and Noah was the first one to keep it, or he was one of the first to keep it on the earth anyway. It's always been kept in heaven, as it explains. It goes on to say in Jubilees 6, 15 through 19, he gave to Noah and his sons a sign that there should not again be a flood on the earth. He set his bow in the cloud for a sign of the eternal covenant, that there should not again be a flood on the earth to destroy it all the days of the earth. For this reason, it is ordained and written on the heavenly tablets that they should celebrate the Feast of Weeks in this month once a year to renew the covenant every year. And this whole festival was celebrated in heaven from the day of creation till the days of Noah. 26 Jubilees, 5 weeks of years, and Noah and his sons observed it for 7 Jubilees and 1 week of years till the day of Noah's death. And from the day of Noah's death, his sons did away with it until the days of Abraham. And they ate blood. But Abraham observed it, and Isaac and Jacob and his children observed it up to your days, yours being Noah. Moses, remember guys, Moses is the guy being spoken to through this. And in your days, the children of Israel forgot it until you celebrated it anew on this mountain. And folks, that's what we're actually seeing in Exodus 24. It starts in Exodus 19. If you read in verse 1, it says in the beginning of the 3rd month, they arrived at the base of Mount Sinai. And then you have several things that transpire over the next 15 days. Moses, with the elders in Exodus 24, 1 through 10, they go up and have the festival meal after they slaughtered the animals. That was them celebrating Shavuot. And then Moses goes on, and that right after that, he goes up to the mountain for the 40 days and the 40 nights. Apparently, there's like 2 levels of Mount Sinai. So the elders went with Moses and Aaron to one level. They had the Shavuot meal, and then Moses went up by himself to the top where he was going to get the tablets and get all this instruction for 40 days and 40 nights, which literally is where he's receiving the book of Jubilees. So in this conversation, the Father is explaining the patriarchs that came before Noah, that came before Moses, all the way back to Noah, and explaining Noah kept this festival you're celebrating here today on Mount Sinai, Moses. Noah kept this when he got off the boat. How interesting is that? How beautiful is that, right? He's connecting his ancestral lineage of the patriarchs before him that came and that were faithful to the Father because they had what's called righteousness. They had right behavior. This is why in Genesis 6:8, Noah's called righteous. He's doing the right behavior. And as you see in this passage here, it says that this festival is called First Fruits and Feast of Weeks. We also would call it, Shavuot or Pentecost. Depends on if you're using the Hebrew or the Greek transliterated. But its technical name is the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of First Fruits. Not only did Noah keep it, but it tells us right here in the text that the angels themselves kept it in heaven. And that's crazy, guys. It says that this whole festival was celebrated in heaven from the day of the creation till the days of Noah. How beautiful is that? So this is a special one when you're celebrating this particular feast, it's not just you on the ground. It's all of heaven's keeping this as well. And they have been since creation started. Just in case you're confused and to think, but I thought they only received these instructions to keep these festivals when Moses got to Mount Sinai. No, been kept in heaven since the beginning. It's really beautiful. So if we keep going, we see that it goes on to explain a little bit more about this Feast of Weeks, how Noah observed it. And this is saying it, and this is telling Moses, and do you command the children of Israel to observe this festival in all their generations for a commandment unto them. One day in the year, in this month, they shall celebrate the festival, for it is the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of First Fruits. This feast is twofold and of a double nature, according to what is written in engraving concerning it. Celebrate it. For I've written in the book of the first law, in that which I have written for you, that you should celebrate it in its season, one day in the year, and I explain to you its sacrifices, that the children of Israel should remember and should celebrate it throughout their generations in this month, one day in every year. Isn't that great? Yes, Mary W. That's right. They celebrate it in heaven too. God doesn't give us behavior that he doesn't keep. He keeps the same standard that he asks of us, right? Because he's not hypocritical. This is the beauty of that the Father and the angels are in heaven, keeping the Torah, keeping the law of God, because it's considered right behavior. It's considered righteousness. It's pretty amazing. So we go on. Just in case you're wondering, okay, this directly tells us the Feast of First Fruits and the Feast of Weeks is the same festival. It's on the same day, one day out of the year, and it's in the middle of the 3rd month. That's when this is. Now, this is important. I'm setting the stage for these next verses we're going to go into, okay? Because we're going to see the patriarchs celebrating this everywhere. And huge things happen on Shavuot, guys. Big moments that we see in Genesis happens on Shavuot. So let's keep going. Jubilees chapter 6. Now we're going to get introduction to the new moons and what those new moon memorials actually are, where they came from. Because we see them talked about in the canon of 66 all over the place, but there's never an explanation of how to celebrate them, why we would celebrate them, and when God instructed anyone to celebrate them, right? Because a lot of people get kind of confused about the way it's talked about in Leviticus and Numbers. So here in Jubilees chapter 6, 20 through 22, it tells us, and on the new moon of the first month, on the new moon of the fourth month, on the new moon of the seventh month, and on the new moon of the 10th month are the days of remembrance. Those are called memorials. And the days of the seasons and the 4 divisions of the year. These are written and ordained as a testimony forever. And Noah ordained them for himself as feast for the generations forever, so that they may become thereby a memorial unto him. And on the new moon of the first month, he was bidden to make for himself an ark. And on that day, the earth became dry, and he opened the ark and saw the earth. And on the new moon of the fourth month, the mouths of the depths of the abyss beneath were closed. And on the new moon of the seventh month, all the mouths of the abysses of the earth were opened. And on the waters began to descend into them. And on the new moon of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains were seen, and Noah was glad. And on account of this, he ordained them for himself as a feast for memorial forever, and thus they are ordained. So this is the back information that we don't get in Genesis 7 and 8, which I wish we really would have a long time ago. It would have made much more sense of all the new moon celebrations we see people talking about and observing all the way through the Old Testament, even up to Colossians 2, 14 through 16 with Paul. So if we go on to talk about Abraham, he's celebrating the Feast of First Fruits and Feast of Weeks also. Yeah, West Blaze, this is a common misconception that they do, that they call it the first of every month. And this is the problem, right? Because they ignore the Book of Jubilees. This is what we reviewed a couple weeks ago when I was reviewing the Hebrew professor Rachel Elior and her work on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and she talks about how from her perspective and being raised in Judaism, being a Hebrew professor in Israel, she explains that books of Enoch, Jubilees, and the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs were dismissed by the rabbis in the first century, and people were told to not read those in the first century by Jewish rabbis, even though they were being buried amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls and preserved, because it was a normal part of the scriptures that people read. So when you take away the Book of Jubilees, now you don't understand what the new moons are, and you just think Numbers 28 is telling you that it's the first of the month every month, where the priests have to blow a trumpet. So this is the common misconception from Judaism. All right, so if we go here into Jubilees chapter 14, we're going to see Abraham keeping this as well. And he said unto him, take me a heifer of 3 years, and a goat of 3 years, and a sheep of 3 years, and a turtle dove, and a pigeon. And Abraham took all these in the middle of the month, and he dwelt at the oak of Mamre, which is near Hebron. And he built there an altar and sacrificed all these. And he poured their blood upon the altar and divided them in the midst, and laid them over against each other. But the birds divided he not. You guys remember this moment? This is Genesis 15. He says, and the birds came down upon the pieces, and Abraham drove them away and did not suffer the birds to touch them. And on that day, we made a covenant with Abram, according as he covenanted with Noah in this month. And Abram renewed the festival and the ordinance for himself forever. You guys, this is happening in the third month. I didn't have the ability to put it all on screen because of limited space, but this is also happening in the middle of the third month. So this is also this moment here in Genesis 15, this wonderful covenant moment, is happening on Shavuot, the same one that Noah covenanted with as well. And it's a festival and an ordinance forever. This is why it's spoken commonly in the Book of Jubilees as a festival of renewal, because you need to renew this. You renew your observance of this festival, this one-day festival, every year in the middle of the third month. It's the festival of Feast of Weeks. It's beautiful. So this iconic moment in Genesis 15, where we see Abraham making this covenant meal with Yahweh, and this is happening on Shavuot, guys. It's amazing. So let's keep going. By the way, like I said, this is actually the same moment that's happening with Moses from Exodus 24 on. This is actually they're celebrating the Feast of Weeks. You guys remember when he's telling Pharaoh that Yahweh instructed them to let them go so they can go and worship him on the mountain. Well, this was the worship that they were trying to get to, so they could renew the covenant. This is very important, very, very important. So Jubilees chapter 1, verse 1 through 2. And it came to pass in the first year of the exodus of the children of Israel out of Egypt, in the 3rd month, on the 16th day of the month, that God spoke to Moses, saying, Come up to me on the mount. I'll give you the 2 tablets of the stone of the law and of the commandment, which I have set, that you may teach them. Moses went up into the mountain of God, and the glory of God abode on the mountain, and the cloud overshadowed it 6 days. So this is after he had the meal. So this is, like I said, the middle of the month is when they have the Shavuot meal, and this is happening directly after that. So the reason why I included this is also to give you some context to Exodus 19 through 24 and how Jubilees keeps referencing back to that moment, because, like I keep saying, this is the storyline of Jubilees, is a conversation happening between angels speaking to Moses on the mountain, on the top of the Mount Sinai for 40 days. This is also referenced to Galatians 3:19 and Hebrews 2:2. So this is what is the law that was ordained through angels given unto Moses. So it's happening because they're observing Shavuot. And I want you to keep that in mind, guys. This is this particular festival, seemingly among any others, seems to be a big deal. And there's a lot of fun and unique things that are happening on this particular feast day. So check this out, guys. It keeps going. Jubilees 15, 1 through 5, and also verses 9 through 11. We have Abraham again. He's keeping the Feast of Weeks again. And in the 5th year, the 4th week of this Jubilee, in the 3rd month, in the middle of the month, Abraham celebrated the feast of the first fruits of the grain harvest. And he offered new offerings on the altar, the first fruits of the produce unto the Lord, and a heifer and a goat and a sheep on the altar as a burnt sacrifice unto the Lord. Their fruit offerings and their drink offerings he offered up on the altar with frankincense. And the Lord appeared to Abram and said unto him, did you guys catch that? I want you to, hopefully you're already reading the book of Jubilees, and hopefully as you read through it, after this presentation tonight, you're going to see, when you start seeing the dates that it gives you, it starts saying in this month on this day, or in this month on this beginning of this month, then suddenly you start saying, oh, an angel shows up. It's synonymous with these feast days, the visitations of the Father's angels to as he says in Hebrews 1:14, these are ministering servants sent out to those inheriting salvation. They're sent out to give us messages, to help us, to do all kinds of interaction with mankind. This is their purpose. And we're seeing huge significant moments when they do show up happening on feast days. And I think that's not worth glazing over. So it goes on to say, and the Lord appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am God Almighty. Approve yourself before me and be you perfect. And guys, just in case you've never seen me explain that and break that down, this is the same thing we see in Matthew 5:48. It's this idea of being perfect in the Hebrew and in the Greek. It doesn't mean that you can't make a mistake. It means that you're complete until the end. That's the usage of that word in the Greek and the Hebrew in the scriptures. It doesn't mean that you can't make a mistake. All these dudes made mistakes, and they were still called righteous because they were continually pressing on toward the goal, as Paul talks about in Philippians 3. They're striving towards righteousness. They're practicing the behavior, and that inherently means sometimes you fail. So it's okay. He's talking about be complete until the end. That's what he's considering perfect. He says, I will make my covenant between me and you. I will multiply you exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face. And God talked with him and said, and I shall establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you throughout their generations for an eternal covenant, so that I may be a God unto you and to your seed after you. And I will give to you and your seed after you the land wherewith you are a sojourner. You've been a sojourner, the land of Canaan, that you may possess it forever. And I will be their God. And the Lord said unto Abraham, and as for you, do you keep my covenant, and you and your seed after you, and circumcise every male among you, and circumcise your foreskins, and it shall be a token of an eternal covenant between me and you. Now, as you can see, I put these verses together. Go back and read the whole chapter if you want a full-on breakdown. It's just like you read in Genesis 18. He circumcises his whole household in that day. This is the moment of the father shows up again to Abraham, tells him about circumcision. Everybody gets circumcised. It's a token. It's a sign of the covenant, and it's being done on Shavuot, guys. How crazy is that? All right, new moon memorials. You remember we talked about the new moons with Noah? Abraham, some unique things happen with him on these as well. It says on the new moon of the 4th month. You guys remember what we talked about in Jubilee 6? It's the 1st month, the 4th month, the 7th month, and the 10th month. Those are the new moon celebrations and memorials. So here it says in Jubilee 16, 1 through 5, and on the new moon of the 4th month, We, that's the angels narrating Jubilees, we appeared unto Abraham and at the oak of Mamre, and we talked with him. And we announced to him that a son would be given to him by Sarah his wife. And Sarah laughed, for she heard that we had spoken these words with Abraham. And we admonished her, and she became afraid, and denied that she had laughed on account of the words. And we told her the name of her son, as his name is ordained and written in the heavenly tablets, Isaac. And that when we returned to her at a set time, she would have conceived a son. And in this month the Lord executed his judgments on Sodom and Gomorrah and Zeboim, and all the region of the Jordan. He burned them with fire and brimstone, and destroyed them until this day. Even as lo, I have declared unto you all their works, that they are wicked and sinners exceedingly, that they defile themselves and commit fornication in their flesh, and work uncleanness on the earth. So guys, the angels that we see in Genesis 19 that show up to tell Abraham and Sarah that they're going to have a baby, they're going to name him Isaac. And then two of those three angels, they turn around and they go down to Sodom and Gomorrah and do that story that we see pick up in Genesis 19 and 20. This is happening on a new moon memorial. This is happening on a feast day. How amazing is that? So if we keep going, Jubilees 16, 13 through 14, and Sarah, she bare a son in the 3rd month, in the middle of the month, at the time of which the Lord had spoken to Abraham on the festival of the first fruits of the harvest, Isaac was born. And Abraham circumcised his son on the 8th day. He was the first that was circumcised according to the covenant, which is ordained forever. Guys, think about this. Isaac is born on Shavuot. How beautiful is that? Isaac is born that day, the middle of the 3rd month. Same chapter, it goes on to explain Abraham, a few months later, he's going to be keeping, or actually the way that it's worded is unique. Verses 13 and 14 actually happen after verses 16 through 21. So what happens is those angels show up on the new moon of the 4th month, and then a few months later, they returned to announce that, in the due season next year, Isaac would be born. We see this play out in Genesis, as you know. So when the angels had returned, they return in the 7th month to tell Isaac that she's born. And this is where Abraham is excited, because she's actually conceived. Now she conceives in the 6th month, but the angels return to tell her in the 7th month. And then as a result, Abraham keeps the Feast of Tabernacles. So it says in Jubilees 16 through 21, and we returned in the 7th month and found Sarah with child before us, and we blessed him. And we announced to him all the things which had been decreed concerning him, that he should not die till he should beget 6 sons more, and should see them before he died. But that in Isaac should his name and seed be called, and that all the seed of his sons should be Gentiles, and be reckoned with the Gentiles. But from the sons of Isaac, one should become a holy seed, and should not be reckoned among the Gentiles. That's the nations, guys. That's what that word means. For he should become the portion of the Most High, and all his seed had fallen into the possession of God, that it should be unto the Lord a people for his possession above all the nations, that it should become a kingdom and priests and a holy nation. Guys, this is exactly what we see being spoken at the base of Mount Sinai in Exodus 19, 4 and 5. How beautiful is that? And of course, all the Israelites at the base of Mount Sinai in Exodus 19 are descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This seed that's being prophesied about right here. He goes on to complete it and say, and we went our way. The angels are saying they went their way, and we announced to Sarah all that we had told him, and they both rejoiced with exceeding great joy. She didn't laugh this time. And he built there an altar to the Lord who delivered him, and who was making him rejoice in the land of his sojourning. And he celebrated a festival of joy in this month 7 days, near the altar which he had built at the well of the oath. And he built booths for himself and for his servants on this festival. And he was the first to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles on the earth. Isn't this awesome? And it goes on. Read the whole chapter when you have a chance, guys. It goes on. I've just given you snippets. These are big chapters in Jubilees. It goes on to explain how he used the palm branches and how he takes the willowy limbs from willowy trees, and he celebrates and goes around the altar once every day for 7 days, and he's just having a great time. It's called a festival of joy. He's enjoying himself because after 99 years, he's finally going to have a child. He's super excited. So this is just a beautiful moment. It says he's the first one to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles on the earth. And again, read the whole chapter, because it tells you that this feast is ordained on the heavenly tablets. They keep it in heaven. They're already keeping the Festival of Tabernacles in heaven. It's beautiful, guys. It's beautiful. So it goes on to say, Jubilees 17, 15 through 16. And we're also going to read portions out of 18 as well, because we're going to see Abraham keeping Passover and unleavened bread, but in a very unique way. Okay? So it goes here in 17, 15 through 16. And it came to pass in the 7th week, in the first year thereof, in the first month, and this Jubilee, on the 12th of this month, there were voices in heaven regarding Abraham, that he was faithful in all that he told him, and that he loved the Lord, and that in every affliction he was faithful. I'm going to stop real quick, guys. I just want to point out we're doing some math, okay? So that's why I put it looks strange at the bottom with a few chapters from 17 and a few chapters from 18. It looks strange, but again, I didn't have time to read all of chapter 17 and 18. There's big chapters in the book of Jubilees, and I'm giving you the snippets because I'm helping you quickly as a resource. You can tie these together quickly because you can see what day this is happening of what month, and then we're going to add some days up, and it shows you that it's happening on unleavened bread. It's beautiful. This is going to be our moments where the Father, it actually tells us, I'll keep reading here, it tells us Prince Mastema, which is Satan, he's actually trying to test Abraham, and so he's the one that suggests that the Father ask Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. And it goes on to say, and the Prince Mastema came and said before God, behold, Abraham loves Isaac his son. He delights in him above all things else. Bid him offer him as a burnt offering on the altar, and you will see that if he will do this command, and you will know if he's faithful in everything which you do try him. So then we go on to, this is verse chapter 18 comes up next, verse 1 through 3. He says, and God said to Abraham, 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 and he said, behold, here I am I. And he said, take your beloved son whom you love, even Isaac, and go into the high country, and offer him on one of the mountains which I point out to you. And he rose early in the morning and saddled his ass, and they took his 2 young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood of the burnt offering. And he went to the place on the 3rd day, and he saw the place afar off. So, guys, the reason why I put this here, if you line up these verses, you see this conversation starts on the 12th of the first month of the year. And then 3 days later, Abraham gets to the place where he and Isaac are going to do this moment that we see in Genesis 22. Guys, this is happening on the first day of unleavened bread, the 15th of the first month, which is when you're supposed to slay and eat the sacrifice of the Passover. How beautiful is that? And of course, we know the rest of the story. The Lord provided a ram on that day. Isaac wasn't actually, it was a test. Isaac wasn't done. And in fact, Hebrews 11 literally calls it a test to Abraham. And we see the backstory here in Jubilee is that Mastema, just like in the book of Job, when Satan comes before God to test Job, same kind of concept happens here with Abraham. And of course, Abraham passes the test. The Father, he doesn't accept human sacrifice anyway, stops the whole thing, interrupts the process, and they sacrifice the lamb, which was exactly what you're supposed to do on the first day of unleavened bread. And remember, guys, and this is just speculation, okay? Just speculation, but remember what it says. The instructions for Passover was you're supposed to have taken the lamb on the 10th, and then you slay it at the evening, in the evening times between the crossing over between the 14th and the 15th. And so that way you can eat it on the 15th after it's already dark, at the beginning of the day of the 15th. But remember that you're supposed to hold that lamb for 4 days. I always wonder, how long was that ram caught in the thicket? Was it up there for 4 days? I don't know. It's just speculation, but it's interesting. So we're gonna keep finishing this. We're finishing up this last little paragraph here, and it's going to be Jubilees 18 through 19. It says, and Abraham celebrated this festival every year, 7 days with joy. That's the festival of unleavened bread. And he called it the festival of the Lord, according to the 7 days during which he went and returned in peace. How beautiful is that? Because, guys, what we've been trying to say let me finish this last sentence, and I'll add my comment. And it says, and accordingly has it been ordained and written on the heavenly tablets regarding Israel and its seed, that they should observe this festival 7 days with the joy of festival. This is why Yeshua in Luke 22 and Matthew 26 talks about us keeping the Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, in the kingdom of heaven. Same thing in Ezekiel 45. In the New Jerusalem, we're going to be keeping the Passover in the kingdom of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It's ordained forever, guys. It's what they've been keeping in heaven. It's a memorial forever. It's a feast day. It's 7 days. And think about what it says. Abraham celebrated it because it was where he went and returned in peace. Guys, we've been saying this for a long time on Kingdom of Context. Passover is, in my understanding, and according to was it in the Septuagint, Jeremiah 31:38, literally the Passover is when Yeshua comes, gets his resurrected saints, and his wrath passes over us as he, like, we're the Matthew 13:30, we're the wheat taken to the barn. The newly resurrected saints picked up by angels, taken to the New Jerusalem to be hidden away in our rooms during the indignation of the Lord, as Isaiah 26:19-21 explains. Yeshua's coming down with warrior angels. This is why Paul talks about us meeting him in the air at his coming. We're rising up. He's coming down with the warrior angels to do battle of Armageddon, to take out the beast, false prophet, Satan, the unclean spirits, and the armies that are fighting against him from the nations. So this is the wrath of the Lamb that's happening. This is why I think it's Jeremiah 31:38 talks about this is with the feast of the Lord that we're gathered for Passover. So how interesting is it? Because if we're celebrating 7 days and then it says we went and then we returned in peace, how beautiful. Because in that 7 days, this is what I've said before, guys, we're going to be made, like we read already, not just in this chapter, but also, 2 Peter, Exodus 19, Revelation 20, verse 4-6, we're going to be made a kingdom of priests. Well, Leviticus 8:9 tells us the process that must happen with priests. You have to be ordained. And guess what, guys? That process takes 7 days. We're resurrected. This is my speculation. We're resurrected. Angels take us to the New Jerusalem before it descends. During that 7-day period, Yeshua and the angels are battling, clearing out the earth, preparing the land for the New Jerusalem to set down, burning everything with fire, rounding up all the bad entities that are fighting against him. We're being ordained in our priesthood. New Jerusalem's going to come down. We went and we returned in peace. Be very interesting. Be very interesting. So let's keep going, guys. Isaac is also celebrating the Feast of Weeks and First Fruits. Here in Jubilees 22, 1-4. And it came to pass in the first week in the 40th Jubilee, in the second year, that is, the year in which Abraham died, that Isaac and Ishmael came from the well of the oath to celebrate the Feast of Weeks. So even Ishmael's keeping it with him, right? Because he was taught by Abraham what to do. That is the Feast of the First Fruits of the harvest. So it's telling you again, guys, the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of First Fruits is the same festival, the same day. It says to Abraham, their father, excuse me. And their, let me see if I can contact my wife if she's watching. I'm not sure. See if she can bring me some water. Sorry, guys. Sorry, 1 second. Let me see if I can get her to bring me some water. Okay. So this is Isaac, okay? He and Ishmael both are going to visit Abraham to celebrate Shavuot. It's beautiful. So he says right here that Isaac and Ishmael came from the well of the oath to celebrate the Feast of Weeks, that is the Feast of the First Fruits of the harvest to Abraham, their father. And Abraham rejoiced because his 2 sons had come. For Isaac had many possessions in Beersheba, and Isaac was wont to go and see his possessions and to return to his father. And in those days, Ishmael came to see his father, and they both came together. And Isaac offered a sacrifice for a burnt offering. Thank you so much, sweetie. Appreciate it. All right. Thanks. 1 second, guys. She came through on the water. Okay. It says, in those days, Ishmael came to see his father. They both came together. Isaac offered a sacrifice for a burnt offering and presented it on the altar of his father, which he had made in Hebron. He offered a thank offering and made a feast of joy before Ishmael, his brother. Rebekah made new cakes from the new grain and gave them to Jacob, her son, to take them to Abraham, his father, from the first fruits of the land, that he might eat and bless the creator of all things before he died. And if you read the rest of this chapter, all into chapter 23, guys, Abraham dies. Guys, Abraham dies on Shavuot. It's a huge day. This is a huge day. Here we have Isaac also celebrating the new moons, okay? Like we learned from Jubilees 6, something that Noah was the first to celebrate. Here in the new moons, it says Jubilees 24, 21-23, and Isaac went up from there to the well of the oath in the first year, the first week, in the 44th Jubilee. And the Lord appeared to him that night on the new moon of the first month. Guys, keep that in mind. Something else significant is going to happen later on the new moon of the first month. Remember, as just a loving reminder, the first month, the new moon of the first month, the fourth month, the seventh month, and the 10th month. Those are the 4 new moon festivals. Okay. So, and the Lord appeared to him that night on the new moon of the first month and said to him, I'm God of Abraham, your father. Fear not, for I am with you and shall bless you and shall surely multiply your seed as the sand of the earth for the sake of Abraham, my servant. And he built an altar there, which Abram, his father, had built first. And he called upon the name of the Lord, and he offered sacrifices to the God of Abraham, his father. How beautiful is this? This is happening on feast days, guys. These are his appointed times. And on these appointed times, special things happen if we are walking in his ways. These are faithful men that were doing the commandments, and they're walking his ways. So we'll go on to see in Jubilees 27, Jacob, he's also going to be celebrating a new moon as well. Here in Jubilees 27, 19 through 21, Jacob went from the well of oath to go to Haran on the first year of the second week in the 44th Jubilee. He came to Luz on the mountains, that is Bethel, on the new moon of the first month of this week. So this is also on the first month of the new moon. And he came to the place at evening time, and turned from the way to the west of the road that night, and he slept there, for the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and laid his head under the tree, and he was journeying alone, and he slept. And he dreamed that night, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven, and behold, the angels of the Lord ascended and descended on it. Behold, the Lord stood upon it. Guys, this is happening on a new moon, the new moon of the first month. This famous passage from Genesis 30, Stairway to Heaven. How beautiful is that? All this stuff is happening on appointed days, appointed festival times. Another new moon with Jacob, Jubilees 28:14. And again, Jacob went into Leah, and she conceived, and bare him a third son, and called his name Levi, in the new moon of the first month in the 6th year of this week. So now, what's so significant about Levi, guys? The book of Jubilees goes on to talk about Levi in great detail, how important he is, because he receives the priesthood from Jacob and carries on and becomes the Levites, who have an eternal covenant with the Father to be the priesthood on the earth. That's why Yeshua is our high priest in heaven, because there's already those who offer gifts and sacrifices on the earth, as Hebrews 8, 1-5 explain. This is a huge moment. Levi was a big deal as a typology, a foreshadowing of Yeshua to come. New moon of the first month on a festival day. Levi's born. Jubilees 31, 1-3. Also Jacob. And on the new moon of the month, Jacob spoke to all the people of his house, saying, Purify yourselves, change your garments, let us go and arise and go to Bethel, where I vowed a vow to him on the day when I fled from the face of Esau my brother, because he has been with me and brought me into this land in peace, and put away the strange gods that are among you. And they gave up the strange gods which was in their ears, that was on their necks, and the idols which Rachel stole from Laban their father, she gave wholly to Jacob. He burnt and broke them to pieces and destroyed them and hid them under an oak which is in the land of Shechem. And he went up on the new moon of the 7th month. Guys, that's the Feast of Trumpets. It's also a new moon celebration. And he went up on the new moon of the 7th month, and he built an altar at the place where he had slept, and he set up a pillar there. And he sent word to his father, Isaac, to come to him and to his sacrifice, to his mother Rebekah. Another new moon celebration. This is happening in Genesis 35, for those of you who are aware of Genesis. Let's keep going. Jacob is celebrating the Feast of First Fruits, guys. This is in Jubilees 44, 2-8. So it says, And Jacob remembered the dream that he had seen at Bethel, and he feared to go down into Egypt. And while he was thinking of sending word to Joseph to come to him, that he would not go down, he remained there 7 days, if perchance he could see a vision as to whether he should remain or go down. And he celebrated the harvest festival of the first fruits with old grain. For in all the land of Canaan there was not a handful of seed in the land, for the famine was over, all the beasts and the cattle and the birds, and also over man. And on the 16th, the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here am I. And he said to him, I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham and Isaac. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation, and I will go down with you. And I will bring you up again, and in this land you shall not be buried. And Joseph shall put his hands upon your eyes. Fear not, go down into Egypt. And his sons rose up, and his sons' sons, and they placed their father and their possessions upon wagons. And Israel rose from the well of the oath on the 16th of this 3rd month, and went to the land of Egypt. Guys, right here around Shavuot is when they have a visitation from the Lord, from an angel comes with a message to answer his prayer. He literally says at the beginning of this, I'm going to remain here 7 days and to see if I can have it, perchance I could have a vision to get an answer to this prayer. And but even though they're in a land full of famine and he can't celebrate first fruits properly because he doesn't have any first fruits. Remember, this was the famine that's happening. And Joseph's already in Egypt, and he, has prepared for all this extra food for all these nations around them so they can withstand the famine. So this is why Jacob and the others are about to come down with him. But they stay 7 days to celebrate the Feast of Weeks and first fruits with old grain. Guys, they're not even doing the festival right. And the Father is still honoring them by answering his prayer and showing up with an angel. That's how much he cares about us trying. Even if we can't do it perfectly, he wants us to try with all of our heart and with all the direction that he's given us, literally, right? Our heart and our mind. We got to put it together. So this is a wonderful example. I like to remind people that Jacob isn't doing this to the letter, but he has the spirit of the law he's practicing. He's doing the best he can with fervency in faith, even though he can't keep it to the letter because he doesn't even have first fruits to offer. The Father still honors him in this moment. It's beautiful, guys. It's so beautiful. So beautiful. Okay, let me go check something else real quick. I actually forgot one that I need to jump into that one real quick. 1 second, guys. I believe this was actually was it 43? 43. Okay, if my wife is watching, maybe she can help me with this one. Because I forgot, I'm going blank right now. I can't remember if it's 38 or 39. Sweetie, if you can put in the chat, if you're watching right now, if you put in the chat the Feast of Addition, I can't remember if it's chapter 43 or if it's 39. I'm trying to look real quick. Of Jubilees. I actually didn't have a slide made, but it's Jacob as well celebrating this. No, it's not 40. It's not 47. Okay, if y'all remember, put it in the chat. She's saying she doesn't have the recall like I do. Well, I know, but you don't have to have all of it. You just have to have like the specific ones I'm asking about at specific times. I know, that sounds crazy, right? But I appreciate you, sweetie. Yeah, I'm trying to remember, guys. I think some of you guys may remember in the chat, it's the Feast of Addition. I can't believe I'm going blank on this, and I can't believe I forgot to include the slide. That's how I was trying to get this ready for tonight. Man, what chapter was that? I think it's in the same chapter. Okay, 1 second, guys. Let's check this. I bet we can find this real quick. Oh, that's the problem. I actually have a typo on my slides. Yeah, it's okay. So Westblaze is saying it's Jubilees 32. Okay, let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, okay. All right, so I'll pull this on screen. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Let's go back to this, Let's share the screen. Okay, guys. So This is the actual 8th day of Sukkot, which is today, that what we're celebrating at least. So this is unique because we actually see, let's see if I can pull it up here. This is Jacob. He on this, remember, because did I read that? Yeah. So this is the night. I must have skipped over that. I apologize, guys. Yeah, I think I actually skipped over this one. Let's cover this one real quick first, and then we'll go to the Feast of the Edition since it's in the same chapter. All right. So this is Jacob passing on the priesthood to Levi, and it's actually in the 7th month as they're about to celebrate Sukkot. So it's the Feast of Tabernacles. This is when he passes on the priesthood to Levi, his son, and then now Levi takes over. And then at the end of this, on the 8th day, they celebrate the Feast of Addition, which is important because it's not actually explained to you in Exodus through Deuteronomy. You're just told on the 8th day in Exodus 23 and Numbers 29, the different places to celebrate as a Sabbath, the 8th day after Sukkot, but it doesn't tell you what it is or why. And you actually have to do, the math doesn't add up. I mean, the math adds up, but it doesn't directly tell you. It says from the 15th to the 22nd to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, but then on the 8th day, it's another Sabbath. And you're like, well, where'd that come from? Well, Jubilees has told us this whole time. This is why the first century rabbis shouldn't have ignored this book. So it actually tells you here, Jubilees 32, 1-4, he abode that night at Bethel, and Levi dreamed that he had ordained and made him the priest of the Most High God, him and his sons forever. And he woke from his sleep and blessed the Lord. And Jacob rose early in the morning on the 14th of this month and gave a tithe of all that came with him, both of men and cattle, both of gold and of every vessel and garment. Excuse me. Yeah, he gave tithes of all. And in those days, Rachel became pregnant with her son Benjamin. Jacob counted his sons from him upwards, and Levi fell to the portion of the Lord. That means the priesthood. And his father clothed him in the garments of the priesthood and filled his hands. And on the 15th of this month, this is the 7th month, guys. This is when you begin Sukkot. That's when he brought to the altar 14 oxen, and he goes on to explain the sacrifice that he brings forward. In the same chapter, just further on down, Jacob is, excuse me, I need some more water. Sorry, guys. Jacob is also going to have this amazing vision. As he's celebrating the feasts, he has an amazing vision. And he gets tablets from heaven explaining it. I'm going to read this is verse 21. It says, and Jacob saw in a vision of the night, and behold, an angel descended from heaven with 7 tablets in his hands, and he gave them to Jacob, and he read them, and he knew all that was written therein, which would befall him and his sons throughout all the ages. And we showed him, I'll just go ahead and read this here. And we showed him all that was written on the tablets, and said unto him, do not build this place, do not make an eternal sanctuary, and do not dwell here, for this is not the place. Guys, he read on these tablets given to him by angels what would befall all his sons throughout the ages. So he saw the future sons of Israel come out of the Exodus and build both the traveling tabernacle and the permanent standing temple, but from Solomon. And he wants to build it. Jacob wants to build this at this point. He's excited. And the angel's like, no, this ain't the place. You're not going to build it. Just relax. It's pretty comical in my opinion, but the zeal of Jacob, and how special the father viewed Jacob, that he would actually show him all this future stuff, which is amazing. This is verse 23. For in Egypt they shall die in peace, and in this land you shall be buried with honor in the sepulchres of your fathers with Abraham and Isaac. Fear not, for as you've seen and read it, thus shall it be. And do you write down everything that you've seen and read? And Jacob said, Lord, how can I remember all that I've seen and read? And he said unto him, I will bring all things to your remembrance. And he went up from him, and he woke from his sleep, and he remembered everything which he had read and seen. He wrote it all down with the words which he had read and seen. He celebrated yet there another day, and he sacrificed thereon according to all that he had sacrificed in the former days, and called its name Addition, for this day was added, and the former days he called the feast. And thus it's manifested that it should be, and it's written on the heavenly tablets, wherefore it's revealed to him that he should celebrate it, and add it to the 7 days of the feast. And, verse 29, its name was called Addition, because that was recorded amongst the days of the feast, according to the number of the days of the year. How interesting is that? Hey guys, it's pretty fascinating to me that on these special moments, these special days, the Father, Jacob didn't even know about the Feast of Addition, and he's having an angelic moment, visitation, where he's getting information from heaven, and he comes to celebrate. He's like, I got to make a memorial of this day because this day is being kept in heaven as well. That's why it's written on the heavenly tablets. That's why I keep saying that. So this is an amazing moment here, that this is the last day of Sukkot. So be encouraged, guys. Be encouraged. There is a huge beneficial part of your walk with God to see that our forefathers, we're in the faith of Abraham. Galatians 4, Romans 4. We do this because they were faithful. We strive to do this and be faithful like them. Thankfully, as Yeshua explains in John chapter 8, if we're of the seed of Abraham, we will do the deeds of Abraham. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Noah, all these guys, they're keeping the feasts of heaven. That's why they're called the feasts of the Lord. He keeps them in heaven. And these guys are keeping them too. It's truly amazing. Truly, truly amazing. So hopefully that just getting a little back history, back understanding of how many significant things that we see in Genesis that are not explained to us. Only in Jubilees does it tell you the significance of why all these things are happening in Genesis with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because they're keeping the commandments. No wonder Genesis 26:5 explains, is Isaac being told that Abraham kept the statutes, ordinance, commandments, and Torah of Yahweh? Of course. So if we had Jubilees in our Bibles, if we hadn't let this literal same generation of rabbis that killed Jesus are the ones that decided people shouldn't read Jubilees. Jubilees tells you the Torah. Remember what Jesus reprimanded the Pharisees for? You guys don't actually do the deeds of Abraham. You're actually sons of the devil. Remember? Because you do the devil's deeds. And he reprimands them all the time. Mark 7, Matthew 23, they're hypocrites. They don't actually do the law. Same thing in Galatians 6, where Paul is like, the people that are trying to get you circumcised and bewitch you and make you leave the faith, the same people of Judaism that he tells us in Galatians 2 that he left, that ilk of Pharisees of Judaism. He says in Galatians 6, I think it's verse 12, he's like, they don't even keep the law, and they're trying to get you to be circumcised to claim salvation. He's like, that's not how it works. So anyway, I just want to encourage you guys. If this is your first time to watch anything from Kingdom of Context, we actually have a milk and meat presentation. You can just look up actually reviewing the book of Jubilees or something like that. I go over the history, the documents, the manuscripts of Jubilees. We also have an Honor of Kings season 2 in our playlist of Honor of Kings season 2. We have multiple episodes where we review the book of Jubilees and talk about its history and unique concepts about it. So if you've never heard about this book, it's in other canons around the world. It just was not put in the Catholic canon, and it was not put in the American canon, but it's in the Eastern Orthodox Ethiopian canon, and it's found with the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's like of all the different scrolls found, it was number 6 in the amount of volume of manuscripts that was found. So it's a unique book that explains so much of the Bible. It answers a ton of questions for us. So, and it tells you how the priesthood was passed down, which is something that you have to infer from Genesis, because you have to know the law really well and know what you're seeing. But Jubilees just outright tells you this is the passing down of the priesthood. Why it's so significant that we go from Adam to Levi. It's very significant, which leads to Moses and Aaron, of course. But so, yeah, thank you, West Blaze. Here's the link if anybody wants to go watch that breakdown of Jubilees, the manuscripts. It's called Actually Testing the Book of Jubilees. So the point is, guys, this hopefully it can help you increase your understanding and know that these things are not a burden. Everything I just read to you guys, do you think anything of that was a burden? All these moments where the angels are showing up because they're keeping all these new moons and festivals and Sukkot, unleavened bread, Shavuot, they're keeping these days. Did at any point, did you guys see a burden there? There's no burden. It's beautiful. This is the joy. This is what literally the festival of Sukkot, he calls it the joy of the festival of joy. So, guys, these are not burdensome. This is why Yeshua tells us in Matthew 11, his yoke, which is the commandments, is not burdensome. This is our high priest, our Messiah, our Redeemer, the Son of God, telling you that it's okay. This behavior, the deeds of Abraham that we just read about, they're not burdensome at all. In fact, that's what he instructed us to do. It's the Torah, the commandments of God. Because if you have any questions, put them in the chat and I'll look at them real quick. Yeah, Mary W., it'll greatly help you understand the Old Testament. Or at least definitely Genesis through Deuteronomy. It fills in so many holes. You're welcome, Isaac. Hopefully is helpful to you guys. All right, Miss Marsh is asking a question. She just asks, since we will never sin again when we get our new bodies, is that like taking free will away? The angels don't have the same as we will. They could still sin, right? They won't, but they could. No, it's not like taking free will away. It's like saying, what's a great analogy? You know how to do something, you never do it wrong again. The NBA, this is a poor sports analogy, I apologize, but the NBA, they practice their free throws. It's a free point they can make. So they practice them to where they can shoot 100 out of 100. And they get to that point of skill where they know how to do the proper technique, the proper distance, the proper energy output. They know exactly the right arc, and they can not even touch the rim, just boom, 100 out of 100. They get to that point where they practice that. They have become complete in training in that particular skill. And so, I'm sorry, I apologize. It's not the best analogy, but the point is, it's like, that we're going to have his law written on our heart, Jeremiah 31, 33, and 34. Enoch chapter 5, 6 through 9. We'll never sin again because we will be complete. We will be perfect as he is perfect. This is the unity that Yeshua prays over us in John 17 that becomes a reality because we are resurrected and given this incorruptible body, an incorruptible heart. So it doesn't mean that we can't. It just that means that we don't have to. We won't make those sins of ignorance, and we won't make those sins of willful sins because we have a new heart that's taken this sin nature out. We've gotten this new, amazing, new creation, new nature of God, of his spirit, where we do his eternal commands perfectly without fail. Not that we couldn't, but we just know we don't have to. Think about all the times in your life where you have made a mistake and you look back on it because you know better now. And you thought, oh man, if I'd have known then what I know now, it wouldn't even have been an issue. It wouldn't even have been something I contemplated. I would have done the right thing. So hopefully that's a decent answer for you. West Blaze, we're actually going to have My House Ministries on here shortly. I don't know if this week, but maybe next week. It depends on their schedule. And we're going to talk about Enoch and those passages there about the new moons and the slivers. Yes, Stephen, this is what I was saying earlier, brother. Judaism tries to tell you it's the second day of Feast of Unleavened Bread, but Jubilees, Leviticus, and Numbers, if you actually study them closely and line them all up, it's one day. It's a double fold festival, like Jubilees 6 explains, on one day, and it's in the middle of the third month. So that I know that Judaism teaches there's a first fruits of barley on the second day of unleavened bread, and then they count from, and they say that's your first fruits, and then they go to Shavuot after that, 49 days later. But that's not at all what Jubilees, nor is it what the Torah at Leviticus 23 and Numbers 28 explain. So there is some issues with what Judaism teaches, just like there isn't a ton of things with what Judaism teaches. This is why Yeshua reprimanded them so much. They have these traditions that they've made up that are not in Torah. So yeah, hopefully that's a decent answer for you, brother. Okay, so the bearded man, Adrenaline, is asking if the first day of Sukkot is on the 15th, which would be a full moon, just like when Israelites came out of Egypt on the 15th, full moon. The full moon was on October 2nd. How is this your eighth day? Yeah, you don't, the moon is not what you determine your days of the month by. So this is not that's Judaism. It's actually a variant of Judaism that goes off of a lunar calendar to the degree that we're seeing it propagated in the last 5 to 10 years by certain sects of people that are following our lunar cycle calendar, but that is not what Scripture teaches. And that's definitely, it's not even what Jubilees teaches either. Jubilees chapter 2 tells you the sun was ordained to be determined for the starts of the months. And so within those months, then you would know how to count your days. You don't look for the phases of the moon to determine when the day of the month is. That's not what it teaches. In fact, this is a great question though, brother, because we're also going to be covering this when My House Ministry comes on either this week or next week. And we'll be talking about these concepts as well, showing from Enoch pertaining to the phases of the sun or the moon and how it goes in its circuits with the sun. And we'll be talking about all this stuff. So yeah, I know you're just trying to understand. It's okay. It's okay, but it's fine. But there's just a lot of people that believe in a lunar cycle and like a lunar Sabbath. And that is how they determine the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, the 29th of months is according to the phases of the moon. And so that's not, we don't teach that, agree with that. We don't think the scriptures show that at all. So I know you're not trying to be contentious. Julie Steinbreck is asking, since Yeshua ate the Passover before he died, did he die on the 14th with the lambs or on the 15th? So we actually did a full on, if you guys could find this, if anyone could find this, let me just see if I can find it real quick. We did a full on, I didn't debate, but I actually moderated a debate or a discussion, I should say, debate discussion, very similar on my channel about this. And we go over all the days about this kind of stuff and the in depth, because there's a lot of discussion on, he says 5 times in Luke that he's having the Passover meal with his boys. I'm just going to cut to the quick here. I'm trying to find this video as I talk, and I'm not doing well multitasking. So 1 second. Let me see if I can find this real quick. So I think a lot of people are misunderstood on the idea of when Passover actually happens. Okay, so it's our Passover live stream, I think is what it was. Yeah. Okay, so here, I'm going to put this in the chat. Let me copy paste this stuff real quick for you. And it was with Matthew Jansen and Ken Heidebrecht, and we go over different theories and a whole bunch of scriptures into this topic. Okay, I put it in the chat for you. But in short, remember the Passover is to be kept until the 14th, and then as Jubilees explains also in Exodus 12, when the sun goes down, you're going to eat the Passover. So you slay it during the evening times, and then when the sun goes down, you get to eat it. When I say the sun goes down, the evening time is a approximately 3-hour time period transitioning from one calendar day to the next. And that is when the sun is going down. But when it's finally gone down, you can't see the sun anymore. Then you're supposed to be it's the beginning of the 15th, which is the start of unleavened bread. And that's when you eat the Passover. So this is why it would be nighttime, in my opinion, when the Last Supper moment that Yeshua and the disciples in the upper room having their meal and their Passover meal. And that's why he calls it a Passover. So that's the first day of unleavened bread that he then, all through that night, Garden of Gethsemane, early in the morning, he's picked up by Judas and the Roman soldiers and Caiaphas and the high priest, and they're taken, he does the trial process at 9 o'clock in the morning. He goes into, the actual crucifixion 6-hour process, being beaten and crown of thorns and all that stuff, and taken to Herod to Pilate. And then by the time he's hung on the cross and dies at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's the general consensus of people putting scriptures together. So that's all happening on the first day of unleavened bread, which is the 15th. Yeah. So that would be the breakdown there, which is exactly what we see, what I read from Jubilees earlier with Abraham and Isaac is Jesus is our Passover lamb, right? 1 Corinthians 5:7. He's a metaphor to be our Passover lamb. So that's why you'd have that symbolism pushed together. Hopefully that's a coherent answer for you. Dan Perez is asking, are cherubim different than seraphim? It seems to be. The book of Enoch, I think it's chapter 71. It mentions 3 different classes, and the cherubim and the seraphim seem to be different. Also, I think it's the book of Ezekiel mentions seraphim as well. Is it because I know the cherubim are mentioned in chapters 1 and 7 and 10, and I think it's chapter 8 that mentions the seraphim as well. I'll have to go back and check. But yeah, they're two different groups. The cherubim seem to be more like the living creatures. They're more like they seem to be very different than the seraphim. Isaac Torres is asking this would be, I need to have like a short insert clip that's like just a bunch of, you guys know, like one of those WWE brawls where there's like 40 wrestlers in the ring and they're all just throwing each other everywhere. That's the visual representation, the GIF of this question. Is this just like, SmackDown, WWE 17 or something like this? To actually go to a KJV only congregation and say, hey, you guys want to do the behavior of Jesus, which is the Torah? most of them would disagree, because what I've found in my experience that the KJV only crowd is synonymous with dispensational doctrine, and they're mostly Baptists, Southern Baptists specifically, and so you're just asking for a fight. It's one of those deals about approaching certain things in wisdom. I'm not sure if I'd walk into a crowd of people in that type of specific denomination. I would probably approach maybe a couple of them or maybe one of them individually to have a more in-depth and intelligent conversation. Because when mob rule gets around and people get that cog dis and they get that, that traditions of men get triggered, it turns into a rough situation. So I would probably say speak with them individually. Just check out my Torah apologetics series. It's on my playlist here on the channel. I give you a lot of great approach in scriptures to go over the Torah and show everywhere in the New Testament and Yeshua how many times the Torah is being taught, practiced, and kept. It's everywhere. Oh, if you were brought up in there, you know what I'm talking about. You got to be very wise about certain. I mean, it's like going. I mean, you just have to be wise. Know who your audience is. Be wise with who I mean, obviously, you never would just want to be disrespectful and just walk in. I know you're not saying this, but just for anyone that maybe misunderstood, you would never want to be disrespectful and just walk into an actual congregation that they're actually have an active church and be like, hey guys, y'all are doing this wrong. No one's keeping the behavior of Jesus like Jesus exemplified. That would be, no matter what denomination is, that would be a bad idea. But I would just suggest talking to the pastor, maybe the pastor first. That way, you can, in fact, if he wants to talk to me, I'd love to talk to him. But I think, see if he wants to talk to me and we can do a Torah apologetics interview. But ultimately, you're going to have to, the reason I say go to the pastor first is because that's a form of not just respect for him being the quote unquote shepherd or leader of that congregation, but you don't want to lose, you don't want one of the congregants going to the pastor and saying, this guy's trying to sway people to this quote unquote Hebrew roots legalism. Right. So you don't want that happening, and it ruins your witness with everybody. You know what I mean? Go to the top first, see if they want to answer the hard questions first. And then, say, look, at that point, at least anyone else that might complain, he would already know, he came to me with some questions that it didn't go well. So Clifton Breedlove, I really don't know. I've wondered that same question. Same thing with like Mennonites, and I don't really know what the Mennonites believe and teach too much. Same thing with the Amish. It makes me wonder if that was maybe their original roots. I need to do more research on those communities. I apologize. I don't know. All right, guys. Thank you for being here tonight. Okay, Sister Payne is asking, when Yeshua's body was taken down off the torture stake and prepared for burial, so part 2, I think, is right here. Was the person doing that considered unclean? Yeah, they would have been unclean for 7 days. I mean, as far as going into the temple and offering a sacrifice, they'd have been unclean for 7 days. So yeah, definitely interrupted their Feast of Unleavened Bread activities, but they didn't care. They knew he was the Son of God. Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea. Now, technically, those are super wealthy men. It doesn't say literally Joseph of Arimathea, even though he petitioned to get the body. It doesn't say that he literally pulled the body off of him. He could have hired other people to do it. So he could have just literally hired Roman soldiers to do it, or just because he got permission to receive the body, the Roman soldiers themselves could have pulled the body down, taken it to the nearby tomb that was prepared. So, but he still even cleaned the body, wrapped him, and poured the myrrh over him as a part of the burial process. So in my opinion, he would have been unclean, both he and Nicodemus. And they're literally in the tomb as well. I think that's Deuteronomy 21. Don't go into the tomb of a dead person. You become unclean. So yeah, he'd have been clean. But it's not like it's a big deal. It's not like becoming unclean is like a physical hygiene thing. It doesn't mean that you've committed a great sin or anything. People get so, there's a lot of misunderstanding about the terminology of what it means to be unclean. It's not like it's not like the sin of murder or adultery or anything like that. It's totally different. It's just about whether or not you can go to the temple and offer your sacrifice and interact like you would want to. And there are real reasons why a person, like with the death of Yeshua and his loved ones trying to take care of the body, there's real reasons why a person will become unclean. Yeah, you're welcome, sister. I hope that's a decent answer for you. KC222 is he's saying, I finally made it to the live stream. What's up, Kyle? Kyle from Canada. Good to see you, brother in Christ, who is looks like he's 3 years deep into learning biblical cosmology. Welcome to the ride, brother. Prepare for some criticism, but stand strong. The word of God is unfaltering. Yeah, DC Talk Store. That's the beautiful part of unleavened bread, right? They can do a second Passover if they need to, if you become unclean for any reason. So, all right, guys. I don't see a lot of other questions unless I missed them. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Also, go to our Lighthouse group and be sure to check that out if you want to be informed about any updates on that. And if you love what we're doing, check us out on Patreon, or also the links below in the video description if you want to support us and keep us going with what we're doing. Because that's how it happens. That's how it works. I have the time, so I don't have to work because I have the time, so I can divvy up. Now, currently though, I am working a lot with Lighthouse because we're trying to get that up and going. But that's the idea of, why we offer the links below the videos if anyone's interested, if the Father puts it on your heart. Okay. That's all it's about. Yeah. Karen C, go check out my video I did specifically on this topic, the Ophanim, the wills within the wills. See what you think about it. See, I try to break down the Hebrew and the Greek and go into the passage and show the translation concepts and see what you think about it. From my understanding, we're breaking it down. Super easy, no confusion. I even cross-reference with the Book of Enoch. Let me see if I can find that video real quick, and I'll drop a link in the chat. It was a Morning Cup of Context I did. Just recent, about 3 months ago, maybe. See if I can find it real quick. Here it is. It's called Ezekiel's Wills Explained. Morning Cup of Context. I'll put this in the chat for you if you're interested, sister. Okay. There it is. It's in the chat now if you're interested in that, okay? Yeah, all right, guys. I really appreciate you. Looks like we had a question. I don't know, brother. Wonder, I don't know what your question was. I apologize. I didn't see it earlier up, so just retype it so I can see it again. Because remember, I say this all the time, but I know not everybody makes every live stream. With my software that I'm looking at the chat, it's not the same as YouTube, and it doesn't let me scroll all the way back up. So if you asked a question like 10 minutes an hour and 10 minutes ago, I can't see it anymore. So just retype it if you still have the question available. Lynette Moody's asking, what would we call Yahushua's resurrection? I'm not entirely sure the vein of which you're asking. What would we call Yahushua's resurrection? Maybe because of the conversation tonight, maybe you're asking about whether we call it, a type of first fruit. That's literally what he's called in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 20 through 24, that he is the first fruits of the first resurrection. So that's probably the most scripturally accurate thing I would call it personally. But I don't know exactly if that's the vein in which you were asking. So I apologize. Isaac, it's my contact. I should be in my video descriptions. It's kingdomincontext@gmail. That's our ministry email. So just kingdomincontext@gmail. And if he wants to talk with me, I'd love to have him on. Cordial conversation. No weirdness. Just tell him that I read the scriptures, and be prepared for scriptural based questions. But hopefully you've seen enough of my interactions and interviews and debates where you know that I maintain the fruit of the Spirit, and I try to walk in love as much as possible. As long as that other person can maintain his composure, I will maintain my composure regardless. But we can either do it live or he can pre-film it with me, whatever he's more comfortable with. All right, guys. So Car to say, good to see you. Do you believe he was resurrected in old flesh? New body, bro. New body. 1 Corinthians 15. He doesn't get old flesh. He's in new body. That's the whole point of him being resurrected into an incorruptible body. I would encourage you to check out 1 Corinthians 15. Paul goes into great depth to explain this idea to us. This is why he tells us in Luke 20:36 that at the resurrection, we're made like the angels. This is also Yeshua speaking of something we only get in 2nd Baruch, or the Apocalypse of Baruch, chapter 51, verses 8 through 11, where it says we're made like the angels in heaven. So this is the promise of the resurrection. We get a new body. It's called a spiritual body. 1 Corinthians 15 explains that we're born in the earthy body first, and then we get the spiritual body at the resurrection. So check that out when you have a chance, brother. All right, guys. I really appreciate you guys. I hope everyone enjoyed tonight's. Hopefully it's, a resource for you to share, and you can, with your loved ones, you're interested in where the feast come from and why it's a big deal. And, what's the point of it? We get all these holidays the Father gave us. I mean, there's nothing burdensome about it. You get more holidays than the world offers you. It's beautiful. So we really appreciate you guys. And we hope that you check us out tomorrow night here in Kingdomcast.